Hi there, this is Phil with Phil of X, and we're going to finish up our iPod Nano. And today what we're going to do is we're going to put materials and get our Nano here all finished up. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I want to do is I don't need these reference layers anymore, so I'm just going to turn that off so we don't have to look at that. And we want to be able to put some textures onto our Nano, and the way that we're going to do that basically is I've got my reference image that I downloaded here off the web, and I just took and loaded this into Photoshop and did a selection on the thumb wheel right here and loaded that into Photoshop and made a PNG file. You can see what I created here. So this is a PNG file, and just the white donut here with the text that you see is the only thing that's left on there. And everything else, because this is a PNG file, is transparent. So any background that was here, you can see just a touch of some of the blue there. I was being a little bit lazy, so I didn't go to the extent of trying to remove everything and clean this up. If I was doing this for a customer, what I would have done was create this donut in Photoshop and done it as a brand new layer. I would have probably used this as a reference, and then I would have reconstructed the text and reconstructed the arrows and done everything so it was very, very clean. For the sake of the class and just demonstrating purposes, I think that what I've got there is fine. I also went in and then just did a quick screen grab and created this image here. Same kind of thing. You can actually see there's some glare that's in this picture, and you normally wouldn't do that. What you'd want is something that was built from scratch. I was just trying to do something a little quick and dirty here for the sake of this demo. The point being is I'm using a picture that's going to be placed into our iPod Nano, and that's going to essentially show the screen. So that's how I did it. These are both PNG files, meaning any background. There's a little bit of background because the PNG file itself is square, and so I went in and deleted any background off of these rounded edges, so those are transparent. And like I said here, this is a square file, but everything that you see, the round donut hole in the middle, and obviously all the border on the outside of my thumb wheel image is transparent. So that's how I created those. And I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel on working with images and creating transparencies. I'll get a link as an overlay onto this, and you can see it right there. And you can, if you need some help with how to work with that, you just go through that tutorial and it'll show you what you need to do. So the first thing we need to do on our Nano is we need to select the faces that are going to get the different textures. So there turns out with Maya there's some easy ways to do that. So let's go in here, and I want to select these thumb wheel switches, and because I went in and there is some detail into these creases, I want to select just a little bit into the crease. And you'll notice I don't have this smoothed at the moment, and that's the way I want to do my selection. You don't want smoothing on, but let's double check our preferences here. And I have camera-based selection, which is what I want, and I don't have symmetry turned on, which is our soft selection, or symmetry, and that's exactly what I want. So what I'm going to do is go in here and go into face mode for selection. I select one face, I hold down shift and double click, and it selects the whole ring. So then what I want to do is expand that selection. So I'm going to show you a trick here. And what we do is I'm holding down shift key. So I hold down shift, and then above the period is a greater than symbol, and I hit that once, and you can see that expanded my selection, and it grows it, and also grew it on the inside. So it's growing down into this small donut hole in the middle, and I grew it outside. So I want to grow that once more and once more, and that's enough. And so I'm growing that selection into the groove there. Now that we've made that selection, we're going to want this, and we're going to need this selection, and I don't want to have to go back through this process of selecting these things again. So Maya's got a nice little thing up here where we go to create, go down to sets, and quick selection set. So I select that, and I give this a name, and I'm just going to call this thumb wheel, and say OK. And if we go over to my outliner, let me put my outliner here, and we look at my outliner, you can see I have this thumb wheel selection. So I can go in here, I can right click on this, and I can say select set members, and see that? There's my selection again. So I have that selected. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go up here, and I want to select where we're going to put the glass. So again, I select this, and for this I'm just going to select across these. So this is my face. But here I want to do the same thing. I want to expand my selection down into this groove, okay? So I've zoomed in here so I can see it. I hold down Shift, my greater than key, which is above the period. I hit that once, twice, 3 times, that's it. So I've selected now the faces that I'm going to want to make glass, all right? So let's go in here and do our selection set, create sets, quick selection set, and I'm going to call this glass underscore screen. Say OK. One note about this is you can't use blanks. If you have names in here for selection sets, they all have to have a character. So if you want a space, you can use an underscore, but you can't use a space. So here's our glass screen. Again, I'll click there. I'll select on this, and I'll say select set members, and there we have the selection for the glass screen. So the last thing I need to be able to select is the whole iPod itself, because we're going to put that texture on the thumb wheel. We're going to make the screen glass, and I want to make the rest of the iPod the metal color. And so now that I have 2 selections of what are different, what you'd like to do is essentially select those 2 things and then get the inverse. And see, this morning, let's see, it wasn't working. Let's see if it's going to work today. No, it's not working. So there's a bug in 2017. I should be able to just select top face, or glass screen, and then hold Command and select thumb wheel, and say select set members, and it should select both of them. It's not doing it. So I'm going to select, I have all the thumb wheel selected. I have the glass screen. I'm going to hold down Command and select that one, and then go all the way down here, and I'm going to hold down Shift and select all those. And what's this doing to me here? Okay, see, I don't want top face right there, so I'm going to move that up there. I want to select all of these. And I want to hold down Shift and select all of those, okay? So I held down, I did the screen, and I did the thumb wheel. So we have them both selected. So now that those are both selected, what you really want to do is inverse the selection. So you go up to the select menu, and we have this nice command here called inverse, and I inverse that, and now that selects every other polygon except those. And those are the ones that we're going to make a different metal. So let's make a selection set out of that. So I say create sets, quick selection set, and call this iPod body. Say OK. And now we've done that. That's good. All right. So then the last thing is, you remember I had that picture that was the display. Well, I want this window here to be glass. I really don't want that to be the display. So I need to get myself just a rectangular plane and use that to put a texture on it, and the texture will be that picture. And so we can do that real quick. So let's go in here and go into polygons and create a plane. And I'm going to move that out just a little bit, and we want to rotate that in the X direction. So let me rotate that 90 degrees, and let me go into my orthogonal views, and I want to move this up, and let's zoom in on this. Okay, and now what I want to do is let's grow this way. And hit my W key. Let's move that down just a little bit. I want to make this just a little bit smaller than the size of this screen. And we can see the size of the screen here. Here's my rounded corners. And so I want this just a touch less in size than that. All right. And that looks pretty good. Now let's stretch this out this way. And that looks pretty good that way. Let's go back to my perspective view. Perfect. And so now I have my polygon material that I can use for my screen. So let's label this screen. And now what we want to do, note that this is flat and I've got this curved surface. Well, if you've been through the tutorial, there's a quick way we can make this flat screen look like this curved surface. And the way I do that is I go in here and I grab the iPod body and I make it live. So we go over here and we click on the magnet, we make the selection live, and I select the shape then that I wish to conform, and I go up to mesh and I say conform. Boom. And that took my screen and it made it conform to that surface. See that? That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And now I can take and let me hit the W key because that's selected, and I want to push this in just a little bit because I want this inside, not right on the surface. I want it inside the screen. Doesn't have to be much, so I'm just pushing it in just a little bit. That's plenty. All right. And so now then I want to take the iPod body and I don't want it live anymore. So let me select the iPod body and click that off. So making live is now disabled. Okay, so now we're ready to go put some textures on. So the first thing is let's do this thumb wheel. So we go in and we save our selection set. So I can go down here to the thumb wheel and I can select the set members, and I right click on here and I can say I want to assign a new material. So I'm going to assign a new material. In this case, I don't need an Arnold material. I'm just going to use a Maya material. And so I'm just going to use a blend. So we're going to put a blend on there. So here's my blend. And thumb wheel material. Let's call this thumb wheel blend. All right. And we're going to use a picture. So I click over here. And my create render node comes up and I want a file, and the file I'm going to pick, I put this in here already, and I have a thumb wheel PNG. That's it. So I click on that and I say open, and I put that on there. So now if I go in here and I hit 6, we can look at the texture, and oh my goodness, what is that? All right, so what we have here is just a real mess. We've got transparency where we're seeing through, and we have, I don't even know what's going on here. So you can see the picture has not mapped itself. Well, I knew this was going to happen. When you put textures onto shapes within Maya, unless they are strictly rectangular, and your picture is rectangular, you have to tell Maya how are you going to map that picture onto the surface. Now this is something that we do in the advanced class. It's called UV mapping. Well, to do what we need to do today, all we need to do is create a very, very simple UV map. And so we're going to do that real quick here. So the first thing I need to do is I need to select those faces that we put that picture on. So I go to the thumb wheel again and I say select the set members. So those are selected. And then we go up to, you want the modeling tab on, we go over to UV on the menu. Let's click on UV, and we're going to create a UV, and the type of UV we're going to create is called planar. And I want you to click on the option box because we want to see something, because we may have to make sure that this maps correctly. So we click on the option box, and the axis that came up, it's because I did this before, it remembered. If I went in and let's reset the settings. So if I reset the settings, this will be what you probably have, and it wants to map in the x-axis. Well, we can see here y is up, x is going this way, and z is going forward. Well, z is the axis we want. We want to map a projection. We want to take the picture and paste it going forward onto that thumb wheel. So the z-axis is the correct one. So we click on z-axis and I say apply. Boom. And look at that. That's almost exactly what we want. All right, so it's now placed it on there. We need to do just a little bit of cleanup real quick. So let me close this. And so you've just done your first UV projection. Now we need to edit this a little bit, so let's go into the UV editor. So we go to the UV menu, UV editor, and this comes up, and you can see highlighted in the gold in the background there, that is the geometry of the thumb wheel. Never mind what these squares are in the foreground. That actually is the rest of the iPod, but we don't need to concern ourselves with that. I'm just interested in what we see here, which is the thumb wheel. And this moves, we're selecting the image. And so what we want to do, excuse me, the polygons are selected. So I want to shrink those so they fit the image, okay? And let me resize this a little bit so we can take this and you can see how this, as I shrink this, come on now, let's shrink this down. This is not going to let me resize, is it? Okay. All right, so let's reshrink this down and we can see it here, how that's going to look like. So at the moment I have the ability to move it. You see the arrows for moving. I'm going to hit the R key because I want to scale things. So I'm going to scale this equally, and as I shrink the geometry relative to the picture fills it up better, right? So now you can see I need to move it. It's a little bit out of whack. So I hit my W key for move and I slide things up. Okay, and I take my R key and shrink things a little bit more. And you can see for this example, I don't have a perfect picture and I don't have a perfect mapping. And there's a whole lot of gyrations it would take to get this to a perfect mapping. But for the purpose of what we're going to do today, we can get close, and close is going to work fine. So I go back and I hit R for scale, and I'm going to scale these up a little bit, and you can see how I'm making that fit. And I'm going to take all this and shrink it down just a little bit, and hit W, move that up, move that over. Okay, R, scale that, make it just a little bit bigger. That looks pretty good. So we've pretty much made the picture map exactly to the geometry, and we're done. So I take that, and we've successfully placed that picture onto our geometry. All right. And that works for that. So then the next thing we need to do is we need to put glass, all right, on our glass window. So I go in here and I select the glass screen. I select the set members, and what I want to do there is I want to assign a new material. Now you can see it's assigned the blend thumb wheel to that. That's really not what we want. It's picking that because the entire iPod, remember all of these are part of the iPod body. So we're going to put a new material on that. So I click on here, say assign a new material. And here I do want to use an Arnold material. And we're just going to go with the Arnold standard material. All right, and there are presets. This is one of the nice things I like about Arnold, is there are presets built in. So I can click on the presets, and hopefully this isn't going too far off the screen. It is a little bit, but you click on the presets, we come down here to Arnold Glass, AI Glass, and I just say replace. Boom. So that made this window glass, all right? And that doesn't show up in the view panel, but when we do a render, it'll come out correctly. Now remember, if you have an Arnold material and you want it to be transparent, you have to grab the shape and you have to unclick that opaque button. So I've grabbed the whole Arnold body. I go in here, and here's the opaque switch. I need to turn that off, because if I don't, then when I do renders, this won't be transparent. But by clicking this off, they will. So we've got a glass material just on those selected polygons. We've got our thumb wheel down here. So then the last thing we need to do is we need to put that picture on the screen. Well, I don't want to see the body while I'm doing that, so I'm going to do a Control-H and hide the body. And there's my screen. And for the screen, again, we don't need to do anything fancy. I can just go in here, right-click, say Assign a New Material. And for this, we can just use a Maya Blend. And so there's my Maya Blend. And now we want to use my picture, so that we click on the checkerboard. I say I'm going to load a file in, and the file here is my screen picture. And there's my screen picture. And I say Open, and it places it. Now note, we didn't have to do a UV mapping on this because the shape itself was rectangular and everything worked out right. If it was upside down, I'd either have to take the polygons themselves and turn them upside down, or I would need to go into UV mapping and rotate it 90 or 180 degrees to flip it. But my karma worked out in terms of how I created the polygon and flipped it up and put it down, and everything worked out fine. And so we don't have to do anything with UV mapping. And so this worked out great. So now we have the picture. I can get my iPod body, do a Shift-H, and we don't see the screen anymore. And now we want to put a metal material on our iPod body. So how do we do that? Well, remember, I've got down here a selection for that. So I say Select Set Members. That's iPod body. I go right-click. We're going to assign a new material. And in this case, I'm going to get a Arnold material. And we're going to use the AI standard. And click over here in the presets, and Arnold has got gold. So I'm going to place gold on there. And we put gold on that. All right. So now we're pretty much set. I've got gold on the body. We've got our thumb wheel. We've got our glass screen. The only thing left is the top. So I'm going to take and grab that top plate, and I'm going to do the switch the same. And both of those are selected. And I'm going to go in here and say Assign a New Material. And we're going to use an Arnold material again, the standard, presets, and I'm going to pick the gold. So I'm going to replace that with the gold, and let's call this silver top. Okay, and here I'm going to go in and double click on that, and I don't want the gold. Actually, what I want is a silver, and silver has actually got a bit of a bluish tone to it. So I'm going to go over here to blue, and then I'm going to go in and pick close to a silverish kind of tone. It's almost a gray with just a hint of blue, and I think that'll do that. So there is that for our top, and the only thing that's left is let's do a render. So we'll set this up. We want to get some lights, so let's go to our Arnold tab, and I've got the latest version, update 3 of Maya 2017. You may not have that. We can go over here, and I have an area light. If I click there, we can just go to the menu. The menus I know are the same, so we'll go to Arnold menu, lights, and let's create an area light. So I've got an area light, and let me move this out and move this up. I'm going to move this over, and let's look at this from the top a little bit. Let's put some rotations on there. So I'm going to turn him like that, turn him down just a little bit, And so that's going to be my key light. And then I'm going to take and do a Command D and duplicate that. W, move that light over here. E, and I'm going to rotate it that way, rotate it that way, and rotate it in. So essentially I've got two lights lighting my scene. Actually, I'd like to pick those up just a little bit so they're a little higher. Take that guy and make him a little bit higher. All right. So let's set their intensities. So I have this light selected, and initially let's set the exposure at about 8, and we'll take this one and we'll set the exposure on 8 also. And before we do a render, I always like to save, so you never know what's going to happen with Maya. Let's do a save. Have that saved off, and now I can open up my Arnold render view. So that's what you want to do. You want to go to Arnold, open up Arnold render view, and so here is our render view window, and let's do a quick render and let's see what that's like. And there we go. Okay, so we have our iPod Nano. Got a nice gold color. You see the menu. You got the screen on there, and getting a little bit of harshness there on the one light. So let me go in and see which one that is. Is that? Okay, that's area light 2. So let's go in area light 2, and I'm going to turn off the specular. See that? So that kills that a little bit. And I can actually, since it's diffuse only, I can even up that just a little bit in terms of intensity. That's nice. And so we've got ourselves a nice looking render. And if I wanted to, one of the nice things, because I have preview, we can see the top there. We've got the silver top. Probably should put a top light if I wanted to see that a little bit better. But you can see how that's coming out. Let me zoom in just a little bit. You can see we've got some noise. The default render settings I currently am working with. Let's call that up. So here's our render settings on Arnold. And we can see that I have my render settings at the default 3, 2, 2, and 2. So let me hit stop here, and let me zoom in on a window, and we can zoom in and take a look at this. And if I take my anti-aliasing up, let's maybe take that to like 6, and we'll hit that, and it's going to render in my window. That's a little bit better. Let's take the diffuse up to 4. Take the glossy up to 4. And maybe take the camera up to 10. See how that helps with my noise. That's looking better. So you can see just in changing my rendering settings, okay, I've cleaned up a lot of the noise that you're obviously seeing up here. And by just picking a very small window, that's a nice way to do it because you get a quick render. A couple of things. Because the picture that I used for my texture is not a very high resolution picture, when I zoom in, and even if I rendered my image at very high resolution, the picture that I used here may not look that good, simply because the texture picture I used is not a very high resolution. So if you want a very good image here, you would want to have a high resolution image, and there you would get more into the details of UV mapping and everything else, so you can map that high resolution picture onto that screen and have everything look correctly. But if you have a high res picture, then when you render it out, it's going to look good. So we've successfully built our iPod Nano. We've put our materials on it, and we've got the whole thing done. And I hope you've enjoyed this project. I think it was a good little starter project, and finishing up, we've got a fairly realistic Nano. And anyway, it's been fun working this through with everybody, and have yourself a great day. Catch you later. Bye.